Sanje Chodan Soje Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dane Jamso Che Dage Jinso Jibe Sonam Che Drola Penchra Sanje Drobar Sho Sanje Chodan Soje Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dane chamso che dage jinso rola pencher roba shu sanje choda soje chonam la chanju pardo jamso che dage jinso jibe sonam shi Drola penchra sanje drobar sho semje tamje dewa tan deve jotan dembar churchi dongar tan dongar che jotan trawar churchi dongar mebe dewa tamba tan mindra churchi Niren Chadan Dan Charve Dan Yom Chenpo La Nebar Churchi Chom Den De Jambe Yang La Chan Tsai Lo Ye Kange Lo Jim Nye Chen Nye Tara Nam Dai Rab Sarve Chi Nye Tun Gun Chi Chen Si Nije Tokara Lebam Zen Kanda Sibe Tsara Mari Mentuma Dongara Chisreve Jozo Kun La Puji Tarzen Yan La Chuju Yang Den Song Rudara Chedro Nyomo Nilon Leje Chadro Jorze Chen Mari Mensere Dongara Nyugo Chinye Chunze Rajan Dene tajen sachu tarsun yun tena luzo gyarse tuvu ku chuta chuta chuni jenze na lumu sirin jambe yang la indu itse den chuje chenra bu sirichi na lu temu mimba rapsarani Kadan Tenchu Shun Lu Toba Ye Lu Zhu Bo Ben Hawa Tsar Du Sur.
Good afternoon. So this morning we went through the meaning of bodhicitta. We also briefly looked at the presentation of how to generate bodhicitta and 7 steps. We also looked at the distinction briefly between relative bodhicitta that includes the bodhicitta of an aspiration and the bodhicitta in application. And we also spoke briefly about, we just introduced the notion of ultimate bodhicitta or absolute bodhicitta. And so now I think we can maybe start to look at another distinction, which is relative to the notion of courage, which is implicit in bodhicitta. You remember Raksam, this disinterested intention. It is to accept the difficulties that could be involved in such an enterprise. So I think it's important to get some kind of understanding of the amplitude of bodhicitta of this wish. It's not it's not a small thing to want to bring enlightenment to all beings and the relative and ultimate good. It's something actually really ambitious. If we have difficulties realizing it for ourselves, and nonetheless we'd like to realize it for all sentient beings without exception, just imagining a tiny thing. I mean, if today excluding all sentient beings, let's just take the sentient beings on our planet that we are living on now, and excluding, for example, animals. Let's take just human beings. Let's say there are like 7 billion of us today. And let's take the example of imagining that we wish to offer to each human being a coffee. It's not much. We'd need a lot of resources just for one coffee, 7 billion coffees. And with the price of coffee today, that would be really expensive. And so when we generate bodhicitta, we wish to give much more than that to every sentient being. So it's a very, very, very ambitious enterprise that demands enormous courage. And so if one of you gives themselves a challenge to offer one coffee to every human being, and then he or she manages to do that, he or she would be one of the best entrepreneurs in the world to manage that, to collect that money and to offer a coffee to each human being. So it would demand a lot of courage. And of course, we can be confronted by all kinds of difficulties. Imagine it's not just a matter of having found coffee and what you do when they don't want coffee. And what if they don't like coffee? So did you ask yourself that question? So you see that it's another important point with regards to compassion. And it's also a mistake that we can make with regards to compassion. Sometimes we have an idea of what would be good for others, and we want to bring them that. But it's not necessarily what's good for them. And so it becomes an act of violence. It turns into an act of violence. Drink your coffee. I really sweated to get this coffee for you. Why don't you even say thank you? So you shouldn't get mixed up compassion with this notion of feeling useful and good, and I do things for others. It's all often associated with pride. Trying to distinguish oneself from others, to be better than others, to be someone generous and good, and it's another form of identification and to reinforce self-cherishing, to confirm the self, to confirm that I am better, prove to others that I am better. And at the very base, this is illusion. This confusion. So it's an important point so compassion isn't necessarily impose what our idea is of what's good for others. So of course we might imagine when I talk about enlightenment that we might have an idea of what's good for others. But you can't buy enlightenment and just give it to and force others to consume it like it was a coffee. It's something that they have to discover themselves. It's a quality in themselves. Very objectively, we've analyzed and observed. We cannot find a higher, more superior quality than that. So in fact, we don't bring anything. We wish to be the vector to help others to discover this reality. But meanwhile, the way to do this is to be the example of qualities that can awaken themselves these qualities. For example, if we are filled with discrimination and hatred, what do we arouse in others? Well, the same thing, discrimination and hatred. If we show real bounty, kindness, compassion, naturally we arouse these qualities in other sentient beings, and in arising these qualities, awakening these qualities in other beings, they accomplish their own being. We can't accomplish the well-being of others in spite of themselves. So accomplishing the good of others is not to kind of go and knock on everyone's door saying, I have enlightenment for you. What is he's forgotten. I've forgotten the name of the church that goes around knocking on all doors. But by showing these qualities of bodhicitta, loving kindness, discernment, compassion, we can awaken these qualities in others. And these qualities are developed by the others. We can never attain enlightenment for others. Even Buddha said, I can show you how to attain enlightenment. But whether you enlightenment or not depends on your own effort. So does it mean to say that you shouldn't do anything? Of course you have to try. And how do we try? Well, by nurturing loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, by showing all these qualities, by dedicating merit, by sharing, etc. And this way will awaken these qualities in others, and they will, through themselves, be able to develop these qualities. There's a story in the Buddha's past lives that illustrates this. In a past life as a bodhisattva before he became the Buddha, the bodhisattva was born as a prince. And this prince, his main practice was Maitri, cultivating Maitri, which we spoke earlier, loving kindness. And he was in the meditation of Maitri. His attitude was he was never being distracted. He was always in that attitude, so much so that he was the friend of everyone, of all different kingdoms, all other princes. Everyone appreciated him. Even his subjects appreciated him. And inspired by his example, his subjects, nobody quarreled. Everyone had become kind for a certain amount of time. So much so that there were no more murders, there were no more crimes in his kingdom. And so, according to the story, there were demons who fed themselves on the blood of people who had been killed. So they were hungry because there were no murders. There had been no murders. And so they considered that the prince was responsible for their difficulties. So they decided to kill the prince. But they weren't able to hurt him. He was protected by his bounty, by his goodness. So the prince asked them, what is your difficulty? And they said, well, we don't have anything to eat because of you. We have no more blood to feed ourselves on. And the bodhisattva head was filled with kindness. He said, "Don't fear. Take my own blood." So he fed them with his own blood. And by doing this donation, he made the wish, when I become Buddha, to also feed you through my teachings. And in fact, there were 5 demons. And these 5 demons became the 5 historic disciples of the Buddha. So you can ask yourselves, is the Buddha lead them to become his 5 disciples? Or did he do that with his own strength, through his wish, through what he gave, through his goodness? Is this what enabled them to feel gratitude towards this bodhisattva that was so good to them? And this gratitude that awakened in them created positive karma, and that created a connection that allowed them to receive the Buddha's teaching and become the disciples of the historic Buddha. So helping others is not imposing an idea or doing something in their place. It is to help them, to lead them to what is beneficial for them, that they can discover themselves. But we must inspire them by developing these qualities, by making the effort to develop these qualities. So, of course, for a beginner, it's not always easy. So, as an aspiring bodhisattva or aspiring to this path, we need to have a courage. There are those who generate bodhicitta as a king, as a captain, as a shepherd. There's three images, 3 metaphors that are given. The king's way is, I would like to help all sentient beings without exception, but I feel incapable today of having this capacity to do this. So first and foremost, I wish to, as fast as possible, become awakened. And then when I'm awakened and free of confusion, etc., I will be able to help others. A bit like a king take the power in his kingdom to then administrate the kingdom. Then it's the smallest courage, but we fear the difficulties, but we can still aspire to the path of the bodhisattvas. It doesn't exclude it. So for some people who wish to be born in favorable conditions, like in the pure land of Amitabha, to rapidly attain enlightenment, have this kind of motivation. This kind of royal motivation, the motivation of kings. So next, let's say motivations similar to a captain. It's like as if the captain takes with him all the passengers and they cross together. They do the crossing together. I wish to attain enlightenment for myself and all beings, and I wish all beings with me attain enlightenment at the same time. So this marks a greater courage. We don't want just to attain enlightenment first. We don't make a distinction between ourselves and others. All together may we progress and attain enlightenment. So I make the effort now, and regardless of how long it takes, for how long I must practice altruistically to help others, I will take the time it takes. But as long as there are sentient beings, I wish to be present, to be with them and to help them. I don't want to liberate from conditioned existence. I'm ready to accept conditioned existence with all the difficulties that implies, that involves, as long as there are sentient beings. So it demands greater courage. We have to come back to the dukkha, the deceiving nature of conditioned existence. It is accepting all these deceptions for as long as it takes, so that all beings and myself may attain enlightenment. So this marks a much greater courage towards dukkha. And then last you have the courage of the shepherd, similar to that of the shepherd. And here the image, the metaphor is that it's his sheep. He'll put the sheep, he'll first ensure that his animals are not in danger, and then he will put himself out of danger. So this is a courage whereby the bodhisattva, he has no hope of enlightenment for himself. He only wants enlightenment for sentient beings, and only if all sentient beings are liberated from samsara, well, then only then will his own benefit, will it be the turn for his benefit. So often the example given is the bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, his immense commitment towards all sentient beings. As a beginner on the great vehicle, depending on one's aspirations, we can show different degrees of courage. There's no difference. Whatever the type of courage, we shouldn't discriminate saying, oh, more courage is better, the greater courage is better. It will ripen, I think, according with one's understanding. Sometimes when we observe dukkha, and the suffering, the confusion, it may seem terrifying. So it's normal that for a beginner there's a certain fear, and that we may follow the aspiration, the motivation, the aspiration of a king. But gradually, as our understanding grows, so does our courage. We may understand that what we grasp today as suffering doesn't have a true substance, just like a dream has no substance. It's not ultimately established. So there's nothing that to really fear, to truly fear. And if we're able to help all beings and that we can inspire, there's a great joy that can be born. So there are many examples of stories of the past lives of the historic Buddha, but also the lives of bodhisattva. I invite you to learn about these, and also explanations on bodhicitta that in many ways give us the example of conduct in terms of motivation and action. So the text that we're studying reflects this vehicle. The vehicle of the bodhisattvas reflects this immense courage, this immense commitment towards all sentient beings, without exception. So the aspirations that we see, the practice that are mentioned here, we can only understand them if we first understand, even in a very summarized way, the fundamentals of the great vehicle. So before continuing on these points, are there any questions or thoughts or clarifications that you would like? We can take a few minutes if you wish for your questions, if you have any. I would like to come back to the notion of sacrifice of self. And in particular, with the example that you just gave, we might think that he sacrificed himself. So is in this case not a sacrifice because he has the view of a bodhisattva? The answer. How can we measure a sacrifice? I think the notion of sacrifice is something tough, difficult. It's to separate from something that we're very attached to, whether it's one's person, one's goods, one's comfort. If it's hard on us, we talk on sacrifice. If it's tough for us, we talk about sacrifice. So it's like the definition of sacrifice cannot be separated from what it costs us. For someone has very little money, giving 100 euros is a huge sacrifice. But for someone who has a lot of money, it's nothing. Everything's it's relative. So in appearance, something that for us can seem like an extraordinary donation, and which would for us be a sacrifice, for the person who gives, it can be different, according to one's understanding of the situation. So in terms of the bodhisattva, who feels loving kindness, compassion, and who demonstrates this immense courage and discernment, all these acts of giving are never a sacrifice. There's only joy. It's something they give. There's no suffering in this compassion. It is joy. Because I don't know how to give falsely. It's like giving without wanting to give. Why is it joy for the bodhisattva? Well, there are several reasons. Already, just in terms of the state of mind that the bodhisattva is in, he doesn't engage in this activity by personal interest. It's all the activity of a bodhisattva is characterized by the absence of personal interest. And for us, it's very difficult to grasp this attitude, because everything we do is for the self, for ourselves. The bodhisattva never does anything for the self. So in a way, if we really give birth to bodhicitta, there's no pride. As soon as there's pride, there's no place for bodhicitta. Where there is bodhicitta, there is no pride. There is no discrimination. There is no grasping of I. There is no desire, attachment. There is no hatred, aversion. That's what characterizes bodhicitta. Bodhicitta reflects the natural state, the natural original state of the mind. So free of all confusion. And that's the ultimate bodhicitta. But even relatively, we're nearing towards it. We have these concepts that we can start to understand myself, other, compassion. We can gradually understand this, and the more bodhicitta is ultimate, the capacity to help the others grows because there is less attachment, less grasping. So it's like today we're very attached to our person because we think the self is real. We think that everything that we perceive is real, that it really exists as we perceive it. Even when I tell you it's a dream, it seems so counterintuitive that it says that's such a far-flung theory. How can you think that? But doubt a little bit about put your doubt, this a priori, and examine through yourself, and you'll come to the same conclusion. It's very difficult to discern and establish the substantiality of our existence. It is like a dream. Imagine that you're dreaming and you have this enormous wealth in your dream, and you have enormous wealth and you could give everything with joy. It's a dream. There's nothing to lose. There's only gain. And so in our current situation, everything we have is like a dream. If you manage to help beings with that, then you've acquired something. You've acquired a quality. But if you keep everything for yourself, actually you're not attaching to anything. You're just you're grasping wind. So everything we're so attached to, this life, it's momentary. It's just ephemeral. So instead of trying to attach to something, instead of attaching to wanting the impermanent to be permanent, we should use our resources to increase our merit and bring benefit to other beings, to other sentient beings. And so there's no sacrifice. There's only joy. But you have to train yourself progressively. Don't be fearful. You estimate, be sincere, and try to cultivate with as much sincerity as possible and authentically loving kindness, qualities like generosity, nonviolence, all these things. Really cultivate them as sincerely as possible and trying to be very careful, being aware of our thoughts, of our attitudes, and progressively we'll be able to give more and more. For example, at the time of the Buddha, it's a story that I find wonderful. There was a very wealthy tradesman, but who was very he'd heard that you have to be generous, and he said to the Buddha, I just can't give. I just cannot give. I cannot let go of one coin. He was so thrifty. And the Buddha said, can you put from your right hand a coin from your right hand into your left hand? And he said, well, start that way. Just give to your left hand, and your left hand gives to your right hand. And once you manage to do that, try and give to another, third person, another, to another. So it's a question of, that's how we can practice generosity progressively. The offerings that we make, for example, to the Buddha, it's part of the practice of generosity. For example, in the Tibetan tradition, we place offering bowls like you have here, filled with water usually, that we And why did we put water there? Because Tibet was the source of all rivers of Asia. There was abundant water. Nobody had the impression of making any sacrifice by putting water in bowls. So we offer a real donation, a real offering is free of attachment. As soon as there's attachment, as soon as there's a feeling of sacrifice, there's less merit. But it doesn't mean to say you can't try to overcome one's attachment. Progressively, the more we understand that what we grasp is a fiction, things are not established in terms of their nature as mine. It's me, it's I who appropriates things in this way. So, seeing this, attachment to what is mine can diminish. So if we can't even find the self that this belongs to, how can there be a mine? How can things be mine if there's no self? Other questions? Our question on courage. If we apply to this the same reason that you just gave on sacrifice, I say to myself that if we're really motivated, things don't seem that difficult. It depends on motivation. I've never been that persuaded by the example that's often given is the of a child that falls into a river, and one parent feels that goes to save them, and it's said that both parents have the same love. The answer, it's a question of openness. It's a question of understanding, of capacity, of discernment. We can imagine if we look at dukkha, we've talked a lot about dukkha. When we've grasped dukkha, the only effort that's worth making, that's worth pursuing, is to liberate from dukkha. Why deliberately choose dukkha and more deception? So the practitioner, the Shravaka practitioner, has love, compassion, understanding. He has all these qualities. But wait until the infinite number of beings be liberated from samsara, it seems to it's accepting difficulties, deceptions, nearly useless pain. But for the bodhisattva, his affection and love for all beings and his gratitude, this bodhisattva cannot accept to be in a state of well-being when everyone else is being left behind, his parents and all sentient beings in difficulty, even if it's nearly impossible. Here, the bodhisattva wants to do it. That's courage. So we give that example not that to you might not seem very convincing. It's not a question of benevolence or that makes a difference. It would mean that the Shravaka has no love and compassion, that only the bodhisattvas have it. That's not the case. We can also imagine also that a parent is ready to do more than another parent for its child. But it doesn't mean to say that they don't have love. If one can do more, he or she is ready to give more, ready to endure more. So there's this idea of commitment of it is this disinterested intention that also implies upstream accepting all the difficulties and sufferings that we may encounter in our effort to help beings. That's courage. That's courage. So it's linked to view and discernment? Well, it's not. Of course, the right view can help to increase this courage. A view from the beginning, the view that is more vast. But it's also a kind of disposition, of merit that we have, that we can also create, cultivate. Because all the beginner bodhisattvas don't immediately have an understanding of emptiness, but they have the courage. This morning, another question. This morning, when you talked about superior intention, you said that the bodhisattvas look for difficulties. Does the bodhisattva aspire to these difficulties to help others, to liberate themselves? The answer: the bodhisattva does not deliberately try to suffer. Maybe I don't sure I really understood the question, but the bodhisattva does not expressly want to suffer. He or she wants to help, expressly help. Whatever happens, the bodhisattva is ready to help. And whatever relationship the bodhisattva has with beings, whether it's positive or negative, the bodhisattva wants to help sentient beings. In the first chapter of the Bodhicharyavatara, that describes the virtues of bodhicitta. Some of the last stanzas of this chapter says that the bodhisattva has helped even those who harm him. So there's a list of negative acts that a negative act negative by nature because of the fiction that motivates this act, and the negative of the act of violence, of killing, but also the amplitude of the negative act can also be aggravated by the person towards whom the act is committed. If one kills one's enemy, there's a negative consequence. But this is not as strong as if one kills one's mother, who only tried to help us by the quality. So it's influenced by the quality of the person. Someone who had great goodness towards us. So the consequences and the gravity of the act are that much more serious. So, for example, an arhat is someone who has accomplished the realization of the non-self in the Shravaka vehicle, and that can attain nirvana beyond suffering. So he is endowed with extraordinary qualities. So if we kill an arhat, well then the negative karmic consequences are extremely serious. So it's the same as one kills a parent. In Tibetan, there are the 5 acts, literally without intermediary. We are sure that if we commit one of these acts without, we will immediately be reborn in a lower existence. For example, in a unhappy existence. It's killing one's parent, one's mother, one's father, an arat, but without getting into this list. And in this list of 5, we don't have the bodhisattvas. And yet the bodhisattvas have the same qualities of the arhats. Why? Because if one hurts a bodhisattva, this negative connection will lead the bodhisattva to make even more effort towards you. He will not abandon you. So that's why Shantideva says he works for the benefit of those, even those who harm him. The bodhicitta has so much benefits. So even if we're opposed to bodhicitta, the one who embodies bodhicitta creates benefit for oneself. So there's a story of the 16th Karmapa, who's like the founder of a center here in Tibet. Before the exile, he was in Tibet, and he was traveling in a very, very poor region of Tibet. And the villagers from this region were very happy that this Karmapa came, because he was so renowned in Tibet. They had nothing to offer to him. They were so sad to be able to make an offering to Karmapa because they were just so poor. But they must have heard this teaching of being able to create a connection with the bodhisattva, even if it's negative. So they were camping in tents. They came to see the Karmapa with a lot of respect, saying, we would like to create a good connection with them, but we're so poor, we have nothing to offer you. That we prefer to have a bad connection with you than no connection at all. So please permit us to establish a poor connection with you. And they threw some stones against his tent. So the fact of being able to encounter a great bodhisattva like the Karmapa Shamapar is an extraordinary privilege, because whatever connection one makes, positive or negative, we are sure to draw a benefit from it. And so to emulate these beings, even if someone harms us, instead of feeling any resentment, like a mother towards a child that is really unpleasant, cries and screams, the mother just demonstrates even more love and goodness. The bodhisattva just increase in the face of harm, just further increases their loving kindness and gentleness and tenderness. Tenzin is, why do we have to be friends with everyone, even those who hurt us? Well, the answer: to better protect ourselves. Because as soon as we get mad towards someone, we get angry at someone, at that stage we don't feel good. Is that right? Because we're mad, we're angry. And at the beginning, If we, at the beginning, we can't appreciate him and want his good, at least not get angry, because it will hurt us less. Maybe he hurt us, but when we get angry, we make the pain even worse. Hope it's clear. Thank you for the question. It's a really good question. I have a Rinpoche. I have a request. First, could we receive the Lung of the Guru Yoga of the 16th Karmapa? That's for the request. And the question, I'm coming back to the same subject when you were speaking about bodhisattvas who accept all sufferings. You said that if it's you said if it's beneficial. So if it's gratuitous violence, what do they do? Are there cases where they might accept or not accept? This is what I'm trying to explain, the answer. The bodhisattva will take all relationships as a way of helping. So even if there's something negative that's done towards him, he wants to help. It doesn't mean that he's calling for others to be violent towards him. That's not it. And it hardly happens to a bodhisattva. Someone who is naturally good and loving and compassionate, it's quite rare that people hurt him. And also, one of the practices of the bodhisattva is shanti, sometimes translated as patience. When the bodhisattva is in the face of difficult circumstances, he tries to cultivate, despite all these difficulties, serenity and joy. So when people are violent, it becomes a circumstance to practice. So it's not something that he refuses. It's the occasion to practice patience, to exercise the capacity to remain serene despite the injustice that he's facing. It's part of the practice. But of course, the other person who's causing this harm is accumulating an immense negative karma. Because, as I said, it's not different from harming an arhat. It's even more serious because of the qualities of the bodhisattva is even greater. But the bodhisattva, because of his commitment towards beings, even through negative even if there are negative acts, the bodhisattva towards him, the bodhisattva wishes to come to help. And if you look at things through a long-term vision, if we don't have access to enlightenment, samsara is without end, has no end. It will not extinguish in and of by itself. Suffering won't come to an end by itself. But if through a negative connection with the bodhisattva, there are negative consequences, despite this, because of the vow of the bodhisattva and the goodness of the bodhisattva towards us, we can be assured that in the longer term, even if there are negative karmic consequences in the short term, that the bodhisattva can't avoid for the person, he will never abandon this person. And because of this connection, in fine, he will bring this person towards enlightenment. So through this connection with the bodhisattva, the samsara will end. It will not perpetuate itself indefinitely. So I have a question linked to a more personal experience. I come from Belgium, where euthanasia is authorized for many years. And so my best friend a few years ago was had access to euthanasia. I was with her. I was glad that she was at peace with herself. And when I hear of Maitri, I wonder how I could have associated Maitri with this situation that I lived through, because I was at her side. For yourself or for that person? For yourself. Well, for yourself, just by accepting this person and her choices. So we're not in a, it's not a matter of situation of judgment, of judging. In the practice of Buddhism, often it's also what's in the text that we're going to study. When we dedicate merits and wishes, so wishing for this person, dedicate to this person who is going to die our merits, wishing that this person have a happy rebirth, to encounter Dharma. That is how we practice Maitri, to apply Maitri. It's to want the happiness of others. So when we can bring something material, that's good. But if we can bring something spiritual that can be even more powerful, we do it. Are there other questions? When we are connected with the bodhisattva, even if we do something negative, in the end it will become positive? Yeah, so don't start attacking bodhisattvas. So I'll take it's better to have a positive connection with the bodhisattva. So let me give an example. The Munlam, there are many bodhisattvas over there. And when we go to the Munlam, it's a very intense emotional experience. And so there's both positive and negative karma. And it's said that it's a site that's a multiplier. So maybe I'm telling myself that maybe it's better not to go if we're not serene enough, because we could accumulate too much negative karma. And in that case, it's exactly what you're saying. Maybe it's better not to go because we create connections, but we're not able to be calm and focused. So the answer, well, we have to recognize our afflictions. We have to face them. We can't just ignore them. It doesn't mean if we're just they're dormant. If we're just ignoring them, they can be dormant, and maybe anger and jealousy aren't there, or pride doesn't seem to be there. But they're there. They're present. They're dormant. I think you got the point. So in certain circumstances, as a beginner, when we're facing different things, difficulties, afflictions are going to arise. We can't avoid it. And that's exactly when they're present that we have to practice the antidotes that are taught to us and use them. And if these afflictions arise where in places where everyone's practicing, then it's actually a great blessing. Because we have the antidote in front of us. And so it's really the perfect occasion to put into practice. So just to let an affliction dormant and try to dissipate an affliction by recognizing it is there's probably more merit in that. We really try to confront this affliction, to recognize their negativity, and to apply the antidotes. And there we progress, we make progress. Because if you just say, oh, the afflictions don't appear. There's a story of someone who went into retreat and he was alone in the mountains and no one there. He was meditating. And he says, oh, my meditation is, I have no more anger, I have no more hatred in my heart, I've been meditating. So he went to see a master. He said, oh, I have no more anger, I have managed to eliminate from my mind all anger. And her master just insulted him and with all these names, and he went into a rage. And the master said, there's your anger. So it's not because it's not manifested, it's not there. Often when there are no circumstances and we're just tranquil in the mountain, there's nothing around, we don't get mad, we don't get angry, and no reason. So sometimes confronted with difficult situations, there we can work on our afflictions. We can progress that way a little more. I'm a little confused. Another question. I'm a little confused about how to manage one's afflictions, because on the one hand, I have the sensation that we have to recognize them, to try to see their nature, their real nature, and let them kind of die of themselves. And on the other hand, I feel that when we talk about antidotes, I would sometimes be afraid of grasping an affliction and to apply an antidote. And okay, we have to be very practical, because this is too theoretical. This is becoming very theoretical. Let's take the example of anger. We're not happy. Often it arises and we follow it. So the first thing is, when it arises, be aware. Not be in the impulse of being carried away by the affliction. But as long as we're not carried away by it and we see it, the affliction is not a problem. But as soon as we're carried away by it and then we blindly follow it, then we're subjected to the affliction. When we see the affliction arising and we recognize it, then we're not subjected to it. It can be present, it doesn't have control over us. So the first point is, when the affliction arises, is to recognize it, saying, this is a poison, this is an enemy. So you're confronting the affliction. But to dissipate it, like hatred has an engine, a fuel. It can be fueled. What's the fuel of what fuels afflictions? It's concepts. He hurt me. It was unjust. I'm so good. I'm so kind, so generous towards him or her. He treated me worse than his worst enemy. I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve to be treated like that. I have to say something to him. All these concepts maintain hatred. So as we recognize it, what is nourishing? What is fueling this hatred? What are the attitudes and thoughts that are nourishing this hatred? They're biased attitudes. We have to counter them one by one. Maybe it's me who has a negative behavior. Maybe I hurt him if he's so unhappy, if he's treating me like that. Maybe I was hurt. Maybe I hurt him and or her, and I am responsible. Maybe I should ask for forgiveness. Maybe I can be concerned by the trouble that I created in the person. And why am I more important? Why do I consider myself as more important? So try to take away from hatred its fuel, and then replace the hatred by its opposite, loving kindness. I don't want to suffer like this. I see the affliction that it creates, the suffering that it creates in me. If this person is expressing himself violently towards me, that he's suffering, maybe there's a compromise that we can be reached, because getting angry is superficial. It will not change the situation. Then you're showing a little more discernment. There's also a notion of guilt. Seeing what could be better, more just to do, and that we don't necessarily do. And this notion that everything should be settled in this life, because we don't have the view that things can kind of unfold over several lives. So it gives the notion of impatience and lack of courage to start. I can feel this paradox. It might not be very clear the way I'm expressing it, but like to prepare one's death and then to say, oh, there's so much to be done. And it's like looking in the mirror, the rear vision of life, and you see all the mistakes we've made. Even as a parent, I see this. I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of ignorance, even if the intention was good. And then there's two trays in play, and it's difficult. There's two scales. There's two scales in this story. So the answer. Our objectives in general are associated with, generally, to an attachment to the self. Must be good. And bodhicitta is not to make the self good, or the self perfect. It's not about being perfect towards our ego. It's not there to reinforce ego. Guilt, the sentiment that we don't do well enough, that we have to succeed this and that and the other. All this is founded on the idea that I have to be good, and that and that is guilt. It's the feeling that we're not perfect, and the more we get attached to the self, to the I, we harm ourselves, and everything we undertake is harmful. So attaching, it's the thought, may all beings, including myself, be happy. But right now with the self, I discriminate. I want to be happy more than others. There's that discrimination that's present with attachment to self. So it's not that so here it's not, I'm saying it's not my responsibility to make every being happy. Every being has their circumstances, their disposition. I can only do what is in the order of the possible for me. And in that sense, I have to show them goodness, loving kindness towards others and towards myself. So focus on the veritable causes of well-being for myself and others. And then there will always be something who will be discontent with this, that, and the other. Okay, so I have another story that's a lovely story. It might be a bit long, but so a long time ago, well, there's one point in the story that evokes something that's in your question. So a long time ago in India, there was a monastery. We can see the ruins today. It's Nalanda. It was a very important university. There was a master. So at the time, there was a tradition where public debates with the patronage of the king were organized, during which different masters of different religions could debate, and the one who lost the debate had to convert to the religion of the one who had won the debate. So it was a tradition. And so there was a Hindu master, Shivalit, Ashvagosh his name was. So he had these dreadlocks and the trident, and he had thousands of disciples with him, and he was absolutely decided that he would convert all Buddhists to Hinduism. He was brilliant. He was really brilliant. He was very intelligent and extremely brilliant. Yeah. And he also had a few different powers, and one of his powers was he could invoke Shiva in person, who would come within him, and it was Shiva who spoke. Another power he had was he had a wise parrot who knew the answer to all things. And he had a very beautiful spouse who was very, very intelligent. And so at the great University of Nalanda, there were like four entry doors, and each door was defended by a Buddhist erudite that accepted all debates, and he refuted all philosophical views. They were capable of refuting all Buddhist all views. So maybe it's a bit romance, but the person who came had to debate with the main abbot of Nalanda. So Afragosh comes. So it's nearly like he conducts a siege of the university, and with his thousands of disciples, he wants to debate. And one of the guardians had been beaten, so he thought that he could get his hands on the University of Nalanda. So he forbid the monks, anyone who was in the University of Nalanda to go out and nor to go in order to organize a debate with the main abbot and to convert everyone to Shivanism. So if I can remember the story. So there were the abbots, the monks who were a little worried. And Ashvaghosha was so brilliant that they weren't sure that they would manage to beat him. So they wanted to send a message to Nagarjuna, to the great Nagarjuna. But nobody could go out of the monastery. So there was a statue of a protector of Nalanda. And so they invoked this protector. There was a gull that appeared, a bird that appeared, who carried a message to Nagarjuna and invite him to come. But Nagarjuna was already old. And so his disciple, Aryadeva, a very great Buddhist author, he told Aryadeva to go and debate. But before going, he said, I want to ensure that you can beat him. So I will take the position that Avraghosh will take, and you take the other. And Nagarjuna was so versed in all the subtleties of Indian thought that at one point Aryadeva doubted in his master. But maybe my master is a Hindu because he knows so much about Hinduism. And in the excitement of the debate, he managed to beat his master with the Buddhist position. But he lacked respect towards Nagarjuna because he forgot in a way that it was his master when they were debating together in the excitement of the debate. And Nagarjuna said, well, I think you'll manage. I think you'll manage to beat Avraghosh because they had gone through this practice together. But you doubted, you had doubts about me. And you're going to meet an obstacle. Because of that, you're going to run into an obstacle on the way there. So be careful. So he thanks his master. Aryadeva thanks his master. He thanks Nagarjuna, and he goes towards Nalanda. And on the way, someone asks him for an eye. He wants, asks, and Aryadeva said, oh, that must be the obstacle that my master was talking about. And as a bodhisattva, I said I would never refuse anything to anyone. So without hesitating, he gives his eye. He just tears his eye out and gives it to the person. And the person takes it and throws it on the ground. So he feels regret. And when he comes back, Nagarjuna will tell him the obstacle was the regret that he had. It wasn't the fact that he gave his eye, it was the regret that he felt. Because there was attachment there. The eye is precious. So of course now you'll want the rest of the story. So Aryadeva reaches Nalanda. He manages to slip in amongst the monks. So there are a few details, but Avraghosh is walking around and he sees a man with one eye. And he says, well, where does this head come from? Aryadeva says, where does this head come from? Because he hasn't seen the body. And Aryadeva says, well, from a neck. So he had nothing else to say. And then a debate is organized. I'm just summarizing. Aryadeva wins the debate, and Ashvaghosha is beaten. And so, to follow the custom of the country of the king, Ashvaghosha will convert to Buddhism. But he's so recalcitrant, so hesitant, that when he's they lock him into the library, and the library has nothing to do except to read Buddhist texts. And after all that time, after so much time Buddhist texts, he became Buddhist, and then he became a great Buddhist master. And we have texts of which he is the author. So that's just to sum up the story. Well, that's the story summed up. It's not really a question, but I find it's extraordinary what we're learning with Buddhism. For example, at the moment, from the news about all these wars. Before I used to criticize those who killed, and now I think of the consequences of their acts, and I feel so much pain arising in myself about what's happening. And so somehow one has to be like a drone and see that everyone has Buddha nature. And so some have terrible karmas, like the ones who are in Gaza, and others are going to have terrible consequences. So it helps to detach a little from criticism and answer. As soon as we start criticizing, we don't change anything. We're only making ourselves suffer. We don't change anything for others. So we have to dedicate merit, make wishes of the example. Be an example. And when we can help and share resources that we have, what we can to help those who are in difficulty. So the person says it's to see people differently. Okay, I thank you very much for your questions, excellent questions, and for your attention. And I say we see each other tomorrow, and I ask you to accompany me in dedicating merit.